Welcome to the August edition of Business as Unusual. We are really thrilled to have you join us today. We have an extremely exciting topic. We're going to be talking about how trusted advisors set expectations and keep customers. And so this is really about customer retention and building those strong relationships. I'm Kathy Steele. I'm here today, and I'll be joined by Tom Letteray and Chris Mckee. We'll tell you a little bit more about them in a few minutes, but our just wanted to set you up for some housekeeping things. If you have any questions, please add them to the chat. We'll be answering questions throughout the session today. If you're joining us on any of our social channels, our social media channels, Dana Walters will be your liaison. She'll be feeding us any questions coming from those channels into the chat, and so we won't be leaving you out of the interaction today. We are, Red Caffeine is the host, and we are a growth consultancy, and we build out badass brands that people want to work for and with. And so this topic is really, really important to us because a lot of customers or a lot of our clients really are interested in forming new relationships. And it's just so important to retain those relationships that you've earned through sales. So excited to get started. A couple of takeaways that you can expect from today's session is we'll be talking about how to create an upfront contact track and mutual expectations summary with clients so that you're both aligning on, what success looks like, getting clients to see you as an advisor versus a line item, an expense line item in their income statement, and really call you first when they're challenged, training your team to live out that exceptional client experience, and then maintaining and measuring client success. So some insights there. So I'm going to kick things off by introducing my co-host, and Tom Letteray, as I mentioned. He's the managing partner at M3 Learning, and M3 works with companies as large as Google and WebEx to entrepreneurial startups, and their solutions change the way sales teams interact with their accounts. The relationships will be at the higher levels, they'll be deeper, stronger, and more collaborative. The tools at M3 transform how your team communicates at every level on the account, and it creates more business effectiveness. Tom Letteray has really become a disciple of M3 since 2000 when he was the VP of Sales and Marketing at SBR, and he has 26 years of marketing, sales, and sales management experience. Tom, you look too young. No way, not 26 years.
When you say it that way, 26 years, that's a lot of time.
I know. It's like almost my 40th high school reunion. That number was really scary. But Tom really brings a unique perspective because he's sat on both sides of the fence in the sales spectrum. And then our guest expert today is Chris Mckee, and super dear friend of mine. He's my, for sure, ride and die every time I visit Dallas. So I never miss a chance to have a dinner with Chris, and he's just a wealth of information. So he founded Venturity Financial Partners in 2001 after holding accounting leadership roles with several different organizations in the Dallas-Fort Worth business community. He currently serves as Venturity's CEO. And his mission is to bring sexy back to accounting. And I think he's killing it. He's absolutely killing it. Justin Timberlake, watch out, because Chris, his firm grew out of a perceived need that small and medium-sized business need a alternative to traditional in-house accounting department. And over the years, Chris has learned that one of his greatest passions is teaching, and feels fortunate to teach classes regularly at Venturity and out in the greater Dallas community. Chris also enjoys serving on boards with various nonprofits, including local and global roles with Entrepreneurial Organization, EO, and locally on the boards of the Notre Dame School of Dallas, High Adventure Treks for Dads. He's a really cool dad as well, and Dads and Daughters, and the Down Syndrome Guild of Dallas. So welcome to you both. I want to always ask that question. Chris, what's not on the bio? Tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, I think maybe a little context for Venturity. We've got about 50 folks here in Dallas, and we our focus in terms of clients is typically clients under 20 million in revenue. Those types of companies really struggle to attract and retain internal accounting folks, and so it's just much easier for them to outsource. We've layered on CFO services in the last couple of years as well, so we have a real comprehensive solution on the finance side. So that's just a little more context around Venturity, and I guess around me, at Waffle House, I like my hash browns scattered and covered. So that's my favorite way. So,
Boy, Chris, the more I hear about you, the more I want to be your friend.
Please.
Share a little personal nugget about you as well that's not on your bio.
I'm a children's book author. My brother and I have run a charitable foundation for the last 20 years that helps local families fighting cancer. We've given about 1.5 million to over 100 families. And about 4 years ago, I started, I've just recently published my third children's book, and 100% of the proceeds go to our foundation. So that's kind of a cool little hobby. And I also like my Waffle House with the greasy sausage gravy too. So
good.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm going to have to try both Waffle House and that food recommendation. Coming from two foodie sources, I can tell. So let's get kicking off. I think, we always try and set the stage by showcasing some of the ways people can grow their organizations through these different growth lanes. And customer experience really spans every type of growth lanes, things like metrics like lifetime value, customer acquisition costs, and increasing wallet share, all great reasons to focus on retaining great clients. So I think this topic today is really going to resonate with so many people because it's just a part of everything we do as business leaders and running our company. So I'll step you quickly through what we're going to cover off today. Chris is going, he's going to take us through this really true real world scenario. He's going to talk about why they invested in building an exceptional customer experience model, how they did it, the results that came out of it, and some of the tools, techniques, and tips. So before we get into Chris, I do want to, give Tom just a chance to, as a sales coach, a sales management expert, like what are some of the other key values in investing in this type of a program?
Here's what I love about the work that Chris and his firm are doing. I think so, especially from a sales standpoint, it's so easy when you think about being a advisor, a salesperson, business development person. It's so easy when the client brings us in and we have that first conversation and they go, "How can you help me?" And a lot of salespeople, business development folks, advisors who have never been trained in the way to maybe have this conversation, we start with trying to tell them here's what we do and here's how we do it. And let me tell you, blah, 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 let me tell you all about us, instead of really understanding. We say it's 3 words. It's cause, decision, and outcome. What's causing you to pick up the phone? What's causing the customer, the client? What's broken? What do they need to be fixed? Where do they look to go? Where do they want to be in 2024, 2025? Heck, where do they want to be at the end of 2022? What's the cause? How do they make decisions? What is it about their decision-making process that's really important? And why do they make those decisions? Are there time elements to those decisions? And then really, what outcome are we looking for? What positive outcome do we need? And what negative outcome are we looking to avoid? And what I'm getting to understand from Chris's organization, it's that space of, if you don't understand the customer experience, you can't answer any of those questions, right? And you can't do that in a really powerful way. And I think so many organizations, this is something that I see, the discovery conversation, that customer experience understanding is something that a lot of times gets a short shift. And we spend so much time talking about what we do, how we do it, and we don't really align that to what the customer needs and what their experience needs to be throughout the process. So it's really important.
Absolutely.
And so I'd love to, I mean, I guess, Kathy, unless you have, because I'd love to ask, Chris, with customer experience being so important, what had you start to, this mission to improve customer experience? What was it about that?
Yeah, it's funny because we really didn't start this journey until we were so we've been around for a little over 20 years. It was really over 15 years into our journey as a company. And so my background is, as Kathy said, a very traditional accounting background. And we started it to kind of fulfill a real need with smaller businesses to really help them with their accounting, something that they were really struggling with. And as an accountant, I really thought, that's enough. I mean, on the face of it, we're going to do a great job with their accounting. And so, this slide shows some of our values. The other two that aren't on here are great accounting and exceptional service. And those are really our first two values. And great accounting, everything really starts with great accounting. And for us, we really felt that delivering great accounting was synonymous with an excellent customer experience. And what we really realized that not everybody really appreciates the value of great accounting, and it's really about more than just getting the debits and credits right. It's really about building a relationship with our client. So really what started us on this journey was we were delivering great accounting over and over again, month after month, and we thought we had a great relationship with our clients, but we were getting these random letters from our emails from our clients saying, hey, you know what, we found another solution. So we call them Dear John letters. After a while, we were completely caught off guard by a lot of these notices, and and after a while, it started where we thought to ourselves, well, it's really more their problem than our problem. They don't really understand how great of a job we're doing, and we just need to really double down on explaining to them how great of a job that we're doing. But there were points at which, and Kathy, I think you were instrumental in helping us sort of launch this journey as well, because as we kind of got to know you guys, we were talking to you, and we had a really robust sales process. We had no problem with sales, but we had clients going out the back door as quickly as we had them coming in the front door. And it wasn't really because we were doing a bad job with the accounting. It was something else, and we couldn't really figure out what it was. So that was really why we sort of entered on this journey, because we've got to figure this out, because we're never going to grow if we're losing clients more quickly than we're able to sell them, and then we're able to bring them in the front door. And we didn't know what it was, so we realized we had to kind of figure it out. So.
Well, that's so interesting, right? Because I think most of us, we believe, well, if we just do our job better, if we just work harder, then great. They'll know, oh, look how fantastic they are. And so once you realize this, how did you establish goals? How did you select the internal team to work on this initiative? Well, how did you do that?
Yeah, the first thing we had to figure out is, how were we going to tackle it? Is this something that the management team, we had like a 3-person management team, how are we going to tackle it, or is this something that's the team's responsibility, or what? And so, that was a little bit of soul searching at first, but what we decided to do was we said, look, this is not something that we're going to solve at the top of the organization and just tell people what to do, and that's suddenly going to get better. I think we really got to talk with our team members that are working with our clients every day to get a good feel for what they think is going on. So we decided to put together what we called a client experience work group. So to go a little deep on Venturity, we have committees within our organization that are kind of our fund committee and our cares committee that do things to enhance our culture. And then we have work groups that we put together that are cross sections of our organization that tackle specific issues. So we've had several of them over the years, and they're there to sort of come together and then sort of disband when the quote problem is solved, if you will. So we decided, hey, we need to put together a work group and really understand this a little bit better. And it was apparent from the beginning that it was not going to be a short journey. So we went to, so we actually pulled in kind of a cross section of folks, and we offered it to several team members as well, and said, "Hey, do you want to be part of this initiative?" And so we put together a team of 8 that really were a cross section of the organization. And I sat on the work group and really facilitated it, but I tried to really have my presence be just one of facilitation versus one of kind of coming up with all the ideas and the explanations. But I felt I needed to be there just from a standpoint of showing the group that this is something that we take seriously right at the very top of the organization. So, and we really, the goals of it were to, because we didn't know what was causing it, we had ideas, anecdotal stories, but we said, look, we've really got to get some data and understand this. So the first piece was really understand it, and then come up with some things we could change that would help stem the tide, if you will. And early on, we established in some of our first couple of meetings that the 2 things we really wanted to accomplish was not just reduce attrition, but also really, if we were going to reduce attrition, we also needed to substantially improve our clients' experience with Venturity. I mean, our clients deserve that. We handle a trusted piece of their business and their accounting. It's something that's super important. And the financial information helps them make better business decisions if it's done well. And so we really needed to not just provide great accounting information, but really there was so much opportunity to improve our client experience. So we said, hey, when we come out the other end of this process, not only do we need to have reduced client attrition, that's the metric we're maybe going to use to measure our success, and that's one of our goals that we need. But we need to really transform that client experience, and that's how we're going to keep clients long term. Rather than try and run around and fix little problems, we need to really start with a better client experience, and that's what's really going to help us. Not your typical accounting experience is really kind of what we talked about. And so early on, we defined also, we'll talk a little more about this, but controllable versus uncontrollable attrition. So one of our goals was to focus on controllable attrition, which is, people just quit us and replaced us, versus a company going out of business, which would be kind of uncontrollable attrition. And our goal was really to get long-term goal, or sort of BHAG, as they say, was to get controllable attrition down to 0 for a 12-month period. So we figured if we may never get there, but if we set that as the goal, it's really sort of saying, okay, well, wait a minute, we got to really do something different. If we're going for that big of a goal, we've got to do something different. So it really challenged us in that way. So that's what our client experience group looked like, and that's kind of what our goals were. So.
Oh, what a great
So
what a great start! Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that knowing your culture and your company pretty intimately, and knowing a lot of your employees, you have that intentional employee experience. So it's so interesting that you then turn the table on that investment in your course, that to what you're doing with customers. So take us through some of the things that you did to get there. Take us through what the steps you went through.
Yeah, I think the first thing we needed to really do was just, as I talked about earlier, we didn't know what was causing it. So we needed to understand what the issue was. And so we went through previous 3 years of attrition, like all the clients that had left us over the previous 3 years, and had really sort of frank, open, and honest conversations about why they left. And that's how we started to parse things out into controllable and uncontrollable attrition. And so uncontrollable attrition was the company went out of business, or they sold to somebody else, and we just had no chance of maintaining the business. Like, we weren't given an opportunity to propose. They said, thank you very much, we've got our own accounting department, see you later, bye. So, but then everything else really falls into controllable attrition. And so then we focused on that piece, and we said, okay, what went wrong with each of these relationships? So the graphic on the screen is like an actual snapshot of client attrition for 2015, and it's client by client, and it has their fees and their tenure with us, and then sort of a detail in the comments, a detail why they left. So, and it was really just some fascinating conversations. And it wasn't a fast process to go through those 3 years of attritions. We were meeting every 2 weeks, and it took us actually several months to get through all of this, because I wasn't going to let it go of, oh, they left because of X. Well, then, and maybe I knew something a little different, so we dig a little deeper. And part of it was just getting I don't know, some agreement on how we were going to have the conversation, and really get to being honest about why they left.
Chris,
So,
it's fantastic. I love this. Where did you pull the data from? Were you guys keeping track of this in a CRM, or where were you pulling all this data
I would
from?
love to say that we were, but we weren't. I mean, we had to go. That's why it took so long, as some of the people in the room had experience with these clients. Deanna Walker, who's our Chief Revenue Officer and the head of the business development side, is very involved in these client transitions. So she knew a lot of the data as well. But we also charge people with going out and saying, okay, this person worked on it. I want to really get down to the nitty gritty of why this client left.
And so you could be even having conversations about issues and conversations that happened a year or two ago, right? Like that's
absolutely. And we just tried to encourage people to be honest about it. And,
and
and sometimes it was multiple factors, but I think what emerged over time was there were sort of 4 or 5 main reasons that a client left us. And so, so that was super important to understand. And so once we were kind of once we got that understanding, we turned kind of the conversation to, you can go ahead and advance the slide, I think. We turned the conversation to, all right, now that we know what those issues are, how are we going to change our processes? So I'll give you a couple of examples of some of the issues. Some of the issues were perhaps that we had a misalignment of expectations. Like, we thought that what we were doing was great, but the client thought we would do something completely different. Okay. Or we thought that we would interact with them in a certain way, and they thought we would interact with them in a different way. So there were a lot of problems around misaligned expectations. There were also just a lot of problems with, we just kept doing our thing, and we weren't really spending enough time with the client and having deeper conversations with them. And so we sort of lost touch with the relationship. So that was another sort of bucket. Sometimes there were things that we couldn't do that they needed us to do. And so that became an issue, that one of them being sort of higher level advice, which is sort of CFO level work. And so what grew out of that was actually a new practice for us too. So what we needed to do is we went through those buckets and said, okay, what do we need to do differently at various stages of the relationship in order to keep those things from happening? So that whole bucket of expectations that we talked about, where we just seem to be doing this with the client, we actually spent the first couple of months after the understanding process, when we got into the designing process, going, okay, how can we solve that problem? Like, all right, well, first let's get on the board everything that we've had a problem with in terms of expectations with our clients. Like, and not only what—
It's almost like you're whiteboarding this mutual expectation conversation.
Absolutely. That's exactly what we did. And that's what this document really came out of this process. And they were, we were really honest about ourselves. They weren't just things that problems with the client's expectations, but often expectations of ourselves as well. Yeah. So we actually, there's 2 columns here, and on the left column are the things that we commit to, and then on the right column are the things the client commits to. And we go over this, we allude to it during the sales process, but we go over it in our initial implementation meeting and say, look, these are the expectations that we have for the relationship. And there's things in here like being an active, engaged partner. We ask that of them, but we also, on our side, take a personal interest in their business and their success. So that's a commitment we make to them. We ask them to be actively engaged in the relationship. On our side, we commit to being friendly, professional, available, and accessible. That's sort of how we're going to be present with them. We ask them to foster a positive working relationship that is marked by mutual respect. And that was something that clients didn't know sometimes, that that was an expectation that we had.
Yeah.
So the great thing is we get there, we get everyone's buy-in, and we're like, we're ready to commit to these things if you guys are ready to commit to your side of it. And for our clients, are like, thank you so much for sort of laying that. We had such a positive reaction with this. It was amazing, the positive feedback we got. But the great thing is we can tie back to this when we have issues later in the relationship. It's like, well, you committed to get us information in a timely manner, and then we'll get you the financials in a timely manner, but you're not holding up that end of the bargain. So let's talk a little bit about that.
So Chris, it sounds like when you were designing this, you actually went to some of your maybe more successful customer relationships and interviewed them in terms of the expectations piece, or?
That's interesting. We didn't actually do that. It came out of that, like, what are the when we sort of brainstormed it, because we'd gotten a lot of feedback from the customers who left, like, that we sort of took a lot of that and sort of got it on board. A lot of people in the room had personal experiences with this.
Gotcha.
So, but once we developed this, we started trialing it with new clients when we sat down with them. And then we also put a regroup process in place with our current clients, and we started getting a lot of great feedback on it. So it was really
So then it's working. That we're asking the right questions.
Yeah. And we did tweak it.
Yeah.
We did continue to tweak it, and this is kind of its
Yeah.
current iteration right now.
Beautiful.
And it looks, here's a big argument that we had. It looks super detailed. And we went back and forth of, well, does this need to be like just a few keywords and 3 or 4 things? And this is really going to overwhelm them, and they're not going to engage with this. And we decided to just double down on being really specific about our expectations in the relationship, and we'd go that route. And we found that sometimes you've just got to embrace the detail. It was such an important piece of setting the relationship up. That we decided we were going to double down on really going into a lot of detail on it, and it was well received. It allowed us to be much more clear about our expectations and what we were committing to on our side as well.
So Chris, was it a sort of an iterative process? You mentioned that you had, you learned some things once you started to get it in market. Did you, has anything drastically changed from its first version to where you are now?
This particular document has definitely been tweaked a little bit. This was the first thing we went out with. So, we had several months of understanding, and then we spent the next 2 or 3 months really putting this piece together. And we had other things that we needed to do and that we were going to do, but we went ahead and started getting this out there with the clients and trained our folks in it. So that was really cool. The next piece we put in place, you may want to advance the slide, was a whole series of regroups that we do with our clients, and this is heavy detail. This is kind of the behind the scenes accountability for us. It's a process we put in place around periodic regroups that we do with clients at key points in the relationship. And Kathy, I've got to kind of credit you from some of the conversations that we had about some of the quarterly and annual regroups that you have with your clients. It was a real seed to that bucket of things where we just lost touch with the client. So we had our misalignment of expectations, and we're addressing with the expectations document. And then the next bucket was, okay, we just lost touch with the client. How can we prevent that? And so we have at key points in the relationship, and then at no less than an annual basis, we have a regroup meeting. And that regroup meeting, based on this design, is super structured. And this is the behind the scenes piece where we prep and we've given guidance to the team based on what type of regroup meeting is it. Is it at a transition from implementations to the team? Is it 3 months after that transition? Is it an annual regroup? So we documented for the team exactly what we need to be addressing at each one of these meetings in order to tease out some of the issues that might come up during the relationship. So those client regroups are really huge, and we get the key members of the relationship on their side and then our service team together for those regroups. And we say, all right, we're not going to talk about financials today. We're going to talk about our relationship. And so that is sort of the next piece that we put together that really helped us. So, and this definitely was an iterative process. So
I love this piece. I do think, we actually were just talking about this week internally about, how different it is post that, first 90 days. So you've got sort of the honeymoon phase, and it's more like the getting to know you phase. And then, but that's so much different versus somebody renewing for the second or third or fourth year.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I think it's really important to highlight there's phases of relationships, just like marriages, I guess.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And to make a good marriage work, you better be in constant communication, right? to make this work. It's really strong.
Right. I think that structure is so critical too, because these are the things that fall by the wayside. And, you know, not every client warrants a quarterly business review or a quarterly touch point, but, you know, at least a couple times a year getting together throughout the relationship, just at a high level to talk beyond, you know, what you're actually doing for them is so cool.
Yeah. And we had to get out of our head a little bit too of, we felt like it was, a big ask for the client to spend their time talking about our relationship. You know, on our value of exceptional service, it talks about a humble attitude of service to others. That's really key to how we service our clients. And so we had to kind of get out of our head on this idea of we're going to ask the clients to sit down with us for an hour and a half and really talk about the relationship and go through the good, the bad, the ugly. So but once we started the process and once a few of our team members started doing it, we got a lot of great feedback from the team members, like, oh my God, it was so nice to be like, now I know, like before I didn't really know, now I know, and I had a chance to really build my relationships. So.
Chris, have you found that sometimes in these conversations, all of a sudden you learn how the client is pivoting their business, where they're looking to grow, that maybe the way they were doing it for the last 6 months has shifted a little bit, and you wouldn't have known that unless you had this conversation? Have you had any of those situations occur where now you're able to help the client at a much better level, broader level?
Yeah, no question about it. I think that another key piece that we figured out was not only did we sometimes lose touch with our clients, but the type of relationship that we had with our client. Kathy, you alluded to it earlier, sort of moving from that vendor relationship to that partner relationship to that trusted advisor relationship. And then if we were going to maintain clients, particularly with the trusted function that we have with them, we really needed to build toward a trusted advisor relationship. And so that was sort of the next piece we designed, was a training program on how to be a trusted advisor. And so that was really the next piece that we really did with folks. After we developed these tools, we had a company-wide training with everyone, and we taught them about, one of the training classes was understanding attrition. So we took them through the same journey in an hour that we went through over the course of 3 months and helped them understand why we were having attrition. So this is hey, this is why this is important. Okay. And then we talked to them next about understanding how we're going to set expectations with clients going forward. Okay. And then we did this training class on the trusted advisor approach. And this was really kind of the marquee class in the middle of the training process. And all of these were company-wide trainings. We were all together, and we had a series of experiential pieces, work things throughout the day where they worked on things together around specific client situations as well. But in this trusted advisor approach, like, this is not intuitive to your average accountant. Like, I was trained to just do debits and credits, and the world should appreciate that. And that's wonderful to really think that way. But I know everyone here who's not an accountant, it sounds puzzling to them that we would think that. So, you know, we really, it's great accounting is not necessarily the foundation of a great relationship. You got to make a conscious effort to really build your relationship. And so we went through this training, and it talked about how to build rapport and how to ask questions to understand the client's business. So Tom, to your point of learning things about the business that we didn't know before, and identifying opportunities where we could serve them more broadly. I mean, we had clients before that used to say, well, I didn't know you guys could do that. I wouldn't have hired somebody to do that. We just weren't in the habit of talking about that thing. So the other piece is continually growing your expertise as a team member, and bringing that value to the client. And then last, just constantly building trust, doing what we say we're going to do, delivering great financial information, and just being there for them just builds that trust. So those were some things we talked about in this trusted advisor approach to train. We defined what a trusted advisor relationship looked like, and then we trained around it, and that was key.
So
And then,
Chris,
go ahead, Kath. Yeah.
sorry, you did just a couple follow-ons on the training. You did all the training internally, correct? Mostly with your internal team.
Designed it all ourselves, customized it all ourselves, because our client relationship, we wanted to be really tailored to our client relationships.
And then it's part of your ongoing onboarding as you add new team members.
We recorded all of the training and then condensed the videos down to really some of the working sessions and things like that out. And so now in the first 2 weeks, they get this client experience training, and so they understand we're all talking the same language around client experience. They really understand what that means, and when they're working with their clients, and the more senior people on the engagement really are talking about client experience and creating client experience, they know what that context is. It's really just from the earliest weeks that they're with the company, they get this training.
So everyone in the organization is going through this at some point. They've gone through it. How's the team administering it? How are you monitoring it? How are you making sure that everyone's living?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. I think that was the piece that I was probably going to blow right by if the rest of the work group didn't hold me accountable, because I thought, oh, we figured it out. We're going to train everybody. It'll all be great. And I'm like, whoa, we got to monitor it on the back end to kind of make sure that we know whether it's working or not. So that that regroup process, we have a regroup tracker, and we track for every relationship whether we're doing our regroups and when they're due. And so, because that's such a key piece of that relationship, or those periodic regroups, so that we're checking in on how we're doing and what's going on with the business. And we are fortunate enough that we meet with our clients every month to go through their financials. So we're super lucky in that we're in communication with them almost every day, but we sit down once a month to go through their financials. And that's a great opportunity for us to sort of build that trust from a trusted advisor standpoint. So we should be checking in with them each month on their relationship in addition to those regroups. But we have that regroup tracker, and we actually established a role called the Director of Client Experience. And she was just someone who was on this client experience work group who just has a natural affinity for client experience. And she'd been a controller with us for a number of years, but was ready to really move up in the organization in that way, and just has a passion for this and an intuition for it as well. So, when you establish a role in the organization, that their sole purpose is to support the teams in creating great experience for our client, but also really is a demonstration to the organization how important that we think it is. And so she's responsible ultimately for making sure we're staying true to this, not just in things like client regroups and setting expectations, but also just in the daily interactions with our clients. Yeah. Even reads a lot of the emails that go email traffic, and jumps in and says, hey, here's a more client experience way to share that information with the client. This is a way to build trust and rapport with the client, those kind of things.
Sounds like it's really just embedded in your culture, right? It's become just part of who you folks are, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's
come a long way, I'll tell you.
When you have a process, I think it also, you're constantly tweaking, but if I think it's a build. You get that baseline of infrastructure, and then something is not working, and then you can tweak it. It's not trying to eat the whole apple all over again. So I love that you're just being additive to the process.
Yeah. And so, one thing I mentioned earlier about kind of identifying the CFO practice. So we were, somebody had a question around this that I'd share. So one of the buckets was we would lose business because they would bring in another advisor that would earn their trust, and then would get us elbowed out of the situation. Oh, you don't need that maturity anymore. I got you covered. So there were a lot of clients that needed the expertise of a chief financial officer, and our role is doing the accounting. So we were kind of the controller on down, to use some accounting terminology. We paid the bills, did the financials, really made sure their accounting was ticking. But what they needed was more, in addition to that, was more strategic advice. And so they would engage a fractional CFO perhaps. And then oftentimes we'd lose the relationship because that person would become their trusted advisor, and we became more of a vendor, and then that advisor would get us replaced. And so we said, look, this is something we can do. And I was probably the one that was most resistant to it because I'm in love with the accounting, but I didn't realize how much our clients really needed this. And so we've been in this business for a couple of years now. We've got 3 fractional CFOs serving our clients, and man, almost weekly we have a client's like, oh my God, I'm so glad you guys added this. This is really rounds out our relationship. So that was kind of how we took something that came out of that and said, it started out as a defensive, like we've got to do this or somebody else is going to do it, to where it's like, wait a minute, this is how we're going to enhance our trusted advisor relationship with the client. We should have been doing this all along. But Chris, that fool, he didn't really know. So, and so that's really how that learning translated into a new line of business for us. And it's not just to earn us additional revenue. It's our clients needed us to do that for them. And it's a more complete client relationship. So we're better serving.
What I'm hearing you just said is that place of understanding the customer's expectation, the customer's experience, takes you from a transactional, just someone who's providing a service, into a strategic partner, right? That space. Yep. And it's putting us offensive than defensive. I love that. Really good.
Yeah.
It's a lot more sticky to be in that advisory place versus being transactional. So, Chris, I know you had some other, really good outcomes. Can you share some other things that came out of this work?
Yeah, I think one of the other tools that we put in place was we started surveying our clients regularly. And so we, on a rotating basis, we survey all our clients quarterly, and we survey not just the CEO, but some of the team members that we work with every day. Anybody that we work with at the client, we're surveying them once a quarter. And that's this Net Promoter Score. So not only do we have the Regroup tracker and our Director of Client Experience, but then we put Net Promoter Score surveys in place. And so you guys that are familiar with it, or you're maybe unfamiliar with it, it's just a 1-question survey that says, would you recommend Venturity to a colleague or friend? And so we didn't know, we'd never done that survey before, so we didn't know where it would come out. What we thought we would find is we'd have a really low Net Promoter Score survey, and then as we started rolling this program out and building rapport, that our survey would go up, and so we'd see like a movement. Well, our surveys out of the gate, and this is not so a typical NPS score in the accounting world. I did some research on this. Is like around 38 or 40 is your NPS score. Out of the gate, we came out at a 90, and we've never been below a 90. We've been like 90, 91. It's ridiculous. So it was nice to know that for our clients that we have that have a good relationship. I mean, they're promoters. I mean, they're big promoters of what we do, and we have a really strong and solid relationship. But what it has done is occasionally we will get a survey that's like, you guys suck. It's a detractor. It's a 5 or something like that, or a 3. And it gave us sort of an early warning system, because in the past, the clients would have just been angry and we never would have known, So, maybe we go 3 or 4 months before we have a client regroup with them, but they're mad that day and they get that survey, and we get that feedback, and then we're able to jump in. So it gave us another tool, even though we didn't, it was different than what we originally thought we'd get out of that tool. We are getting a sort of the early warning system when we do have a problem. So that's the last piece of the monitoring deal. But so that's one of the outcomes that really came out. There were several outcomes. One, we just really, it gave our people the confidence to have different types of conversations than they were having before with our clients. And it took time. I mean, they're accountants and they're shy and they're introverted, but as I will say that our team members are not your typical accountants that you would think from that standpoint. They tend to be a little more outgoing than your typical accountant. So they embraced it more than your typical accountant might, but it still was out of their comfort zone. So it took time, but man, they would get such positive feedback as their relationship with the client really drew a lot closer, that it sort of built on itself in that way. So that was really a big outcome from it. And as they learned more about each client's business, they got better at the accounting on that client, because if they understood the business better, they are going to do a better job on the accounting. So that was kind of a key outcome as well. And so I will tell you, the $1 million question is literally $1 million question for us, because we were having $1 million plus a year of client turnover and in fees. It did substantially reduce controllable attrition. So our typical attrition for a year was 25 to 30 clients that we would lose, which was crazy because we've got 120, 130 clients. So we had a huge amount of attrition during the course of the year, and 2/3 of that was controllable attrition. So 2 years into this program, after we rolled it out, we reduced that to a total of 18 clients, but only 12 of that was controllable. And that was 2 years in. And a lot of that controllable attrition was where we actually decided to part ways with the client. So we actually consider that to be controllable attrition, because it's not, it was maybe the wrong relationship that we got into in the first place, or we let the relationship go and we couldn't really get it back. But we had almost no surprise emails on a Monday morning on the first of the month that said, "Hey, we're giving you a 30 days notice. Let's see you later. Bye." We've already hired somebody new, and all of that. So we have hardly any of those anymore, and that's really it's really a substantial decrease so attrition has gone from probably in terms of revenue 20% of our client base each year, now down to about 10% of our client base every year. And it's an outsourcing business, so it's never going to be perfect, but we still have that goal out there. In fact, it's in our vision for our business that we are going to have a 12-month period where we're going to lose no clients to controllable attrition. So we're continually revisiting this through our director of client experience. She's continuing to hold us accountable to it. So there's the tangible reducing attrition, but there's also the intangible of really building significantly closer relationships. And one of our goals was to get the call. Like when our client needs something, rather than calling somebody else, we're their first call. And that has been night and day. In the majority of our client relationships, we get the call first. And if we can't do it, we'll help them find somebody. But
Chris, we probably haven't had a better example of that than in the last 2 years with COVID and with everything. How did the pandemic impact this work that you guys are doing? Did you find that because you had already done this, that your relationships with your clients were significantly better? How did the pandemic show up for you guys?
It's an interesting question. We had some clients that just were devastated by the pandemic and shut down, but we really kept all of our other relationships. And I think that through this whole idea of being trusted advisors for our clients and some other things we've done in terms of open book management, our team sort of immediately jumped in and said, okay, how can we protect our revenue? In other words, as a business, we need to keep our jobs. So what can we do for our clients during this difficult time? And within a few days after some of these things in the paper about and the news about PPP and what is that, our clients in our weekly huddles, our team members in our weekly huddles were saying, "Hey, we're hearing about this PPP thing. Is there something we can help our clients with?" Well, gosh, and by April, when that stuff kind of came into place, for really substantially all of our clients, we were doing their PPP applications and pulling together all the. We were the best people positioned to do it, and we got the call from them to do it. Like we were proactive about going to them, but they trusted us to do it at the same time as well. And I think that's where a lot of that foundational work really helped. In terms of the pandemic, we didn't have as many face-to-face meetings, but we were already in the habit of meeting with our clients monthly to go through their financials. And it was, we really were able to kind of just continue the momentum with our client experience. But it's so good. I'm so thankful that we had it in place, because I'm not sure what would have happened if we didn't have it in place. Not going into
Plus, there had to be an interesting, those regroups when you're meeting at a higher level. Also, I'm sure those were really rich and powerful too, to understand what they were trying to accomplish. And
and it would change very quickly as well, as you guys remember during those times. So we were fortunate that we had it in place.
We've got a couple great questions that I want to make sure we get to. So as a marketer, I love this one. How has understanding your client's experience impacted the way you go to market? Is this something you're using as potentially a point of differentiation?
I do think our sales team, there's no question, talks about it from day one, and we talk about not only our client experience program, but we talk about shared and mutual expectations, and we lay that foundation from the beginning. And I think that's really helped us have a different kind of conversation during the sales process. And you would think that would be off-putting, but it's actually really deepens our conversation during the sales process as well, because they realize that one of our goals is to become a trusted advisor, to really craft a solution for them that meets their needs. And then we're just not going to be doing the debits and credits. We're going to take a personal interest in your business and your success. That's something we talk about regularly.
Did you
Go ahead,
change in your recruiting for employees? Is that conversation come up at all in recruiting?
I think it's changed a little bit. The questions we ask and the type of people that we bring on, although we've always really looked for not your typical accountant, and be somebody who we feel like is going to be able to deliver an exceptional client experience. And that is a conversation we have now when we're evaluating candidates and recruiting. Well, how do you think they're, the accounting's there, but how do you think they're going to be on client experience?
Right.
That's like a question that we ask from the very beginning. It's like, okay, well then they're a no. If they can't, because we can hire anybody to do accounting, but to deliver an exceptional client experience, it takes a little something extra. So, yeah.
Are you finding that you can train for exceptional customer experience?
The skills are very trainable. It's just a matter of what's their head trash, and what's their experience, and what's their holdback, how long it takes to really become sort of part of who they are. We go so far as to give them a series of questions to ask when they're at a financial summit that sort of deepen the relationship. And so we've given them a ton of tools, and so it is something that is trainable and practicable. And we're super patient with our team around this, because we know that they don't get any of this training in college when they're taking accounting classes. And so it's not sort of natural for them. So yeah, it definitely is trainable. It's just, you've got to really be committed to it, and be committed to the fact that it's ingrained in parts, sort of who you are as a person at Venturity, that you are delivering exceptional client experience. So.
Love it. There's another great question here, and I think it's an interesting thing in what we talk about and teach our clients is, how do I qualify and disqualify earlier in the relationship? Did you find that your research actually allowed you to, the question says, were you able to find common red flags in which you would proactively choose to get out of a relationship with a potential client instead of waiting for the clients to walk away?
Absolutely. That's why I say we're much more proactive about that now. And we're really, it's actually changed our sales process a little bit, because we ask ourselves the question, are we going to be able to get to great accounting with this client? Are they the type of people that are going to be committed to it? Are they going to be able to, are they going to communicate with us in a way that's going to make it a successful relationship? So hopefully what we're doing is we're screening out some of that. And it's hard. I mean, it's like, as they say, your values are only your values when they cost you money. It's going to cost us money. But we're walking away from relationships before we even enter into the relationship if we know that we're not going to be successful in the relationship because we can't deliver an exceptional client experience, because it's something about this client's approach to their business or their business maturity or something along those lines. It's a hard decision to make, but it keeps us from having to make that decision somewhere down the line. And then we've become more structured about how we decide to exit a relationship as well. We're not just walking away. We are being much more deliberate about what are those red flags. And now we've set expectations up front. Let's go back to that expectation document and see whether the client can say, oh yeah, you're right, I'm willing to kind of change, or not. And if they're not, we're not the right solution. So it's given us a lens through which to evaluate our client relationships much more effectively.
Great stuff. Really great stuff.
I we were talking about that as well. Is there an opportunity in that 90-day period? I think you really do see how you're going to work together. So I think that's your opportunity to reset expectations if it's necessary, that you missed something in the sales process. So I can't believe how quickly this hour has gone. I could talk about this topic for 3 more hours at least. But we do want to let everybody know how to connect with Chris if they've got sexy accounting questions, or if they've got any questions about some of the things that they did and want a little bit of a deeper dive. He's so lovely. He's always willing to share with other business leaders things that he's learned and share his experiences. So there's a couple of ways to reach out to him via LinkedIn or email, and just put the business as unusual in the subject line so he knows that your question's coming from today's event. And would love to always show so much appreciation for our sponsors. Tom, thanks so much for being a co-host. You always bring such a great value to the conversation. I also want to talk about Venturity and HR Source, our other partners that are sponsoring the webinar and have been joining me as co-hosts as well. And then our next event coming up in September 15th, is really a fascinating topic with a friend of Chris and ours, Rob Dubé from he's founded a new company, so let me give you a little rundown about Rob. So Rob started his entrepreneurial journey selling blow pops in high school, and now he's leading one of Forbes' best small companies. He started his first business, right out of high school, but in 1991 he founded Image One. And so if you are familiar with the entrepreneurial operating system, Rob was one of the companies featured in Gino Wickman's book Traction. And so he's got a close relationship with Gino, and he has developed a new organization that is highlighting the 10 disciplines that EOS leaders use to grow their companies. And so this is going to be really cool interactive session where Rob's going to take us through these 10 disciplines and help us assess how we could bring back time, bring back happiness to our personal lives, and really add value and impact to our business. So I hope you don't have to be an EOS company to get some value out of this conversation, and I hope you'll join us on September 15th. So again, thank you to Chris and Tom for joining me today. It's been fantastic. And thank you to our audience. Some great questions. Have a great rest of your day.